Gopijana Balabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Balabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Balabha Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanam Chadi Jamunatira Vanam Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Gopijana Balabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Balabha Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanam Chadi Jamunatira Vanam Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Jayom Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivijagasaraja Astatarasata Simad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaura Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Well, we're happily and sadly at the same time completing Brahma's prayers this evening, text 40. There's more to the chapter, but it's good to make some summary impressions from the whole of Brahma's prayers. There was there was a stretch there in the first 30 verses where it was really high philosophy, and I thought some devotees might fall out of the bus or something because it was, let me out of here. It was really elevated. But you'll hear this evening from our acharyas how much they were relishing and their appreciation for the message of Brahma in these prayers. You could say a few overarching themes. The insufficiency of gyan, or the process of knowledge, to know Krishna. The completeness of bhakti as a means of knowing Krishna. And connected to that is the most elevated position of bhakti beyond Brahma, the most intelligent, powerful person in the whole universe. Recognizing his insufficiency in the bhakti realm compared to the residents of Vrindavan. Another practical, the phrase used these days is takeaway, is we all make mistakes. And what should be your position when you make the mistake? With deep contrition, to be very unhappy with oneself or sorry towards the other person, and appeal for forgiveness. But of course, Brahma knows that Krishna is forgiving. And not only he's forgiving, he continues to give mercy, as he did with Brahma in multiple ways. We talked about that yesterday evening. Brahma was curious. He satisfied his curiosity. And this is, from Bhagavad Gita, there's 4 types of pious people that render service to Krishna. Chatur vidha bhajante mam jana sukriti. Pious people, jana sukriti. They render devotional service, and the first one is those who are curious. Well, there are those in distress, those in want of wealth, those that are curious. Jigyasu. They're curious. He was curious. He got an answer. Boy, did he get an answer. But his was more than a mistake. It was a mistake, but it was more than a mistake. You could say it was criminal. Now, how can an exalted Mahajan do something criminal? Kidnap. Or, say a little softer, he interfered with Krishna's pastimes. Krishna was having lunch, and he interrupted it. Specifically, even, Krishna doesn't ask him, where'd you put the cowherd boys? Brahma says, yeah, you're omniscient. You don't need to ask me, and I don't need to tell you, you know where they are. Because he went looking for them, but he's omniscient. It's a pastime. All of these sequences of things. So through we'll hear the appreciation of our acharyas about this wonderful set of prayers, 40 verses. It's a long set of prayers. And his wanting to resume his service. Because stepping back, the post of Brahma, it's such an important post that one of the requirements, standard requirements, is 100 lifetimes of flawless execution of one's duties of life. Try to do it for 1 hour. Flawless execution of 100 lifetimes. And if there isn't a qualified person, Krishna does himself. So he's a very, very qualified person in terms of Dharma, in terms of everything. Knower of Vedas, he's not lacking in knowledge. Even such a person can make a mistake. So now what about us? We can make mistakes. Can we make mistakes? Do we make mistakes? We make mistakes. And how to address ourselves. And how does Krishna address himself to us? Even with that big mistake, still Krishna reciprocated. This is your curiosity, here's the answer. Oh. Doesn't mean, well, okay, Krishna is forgiving, and so contrition is still appropriate, and offering prayers to the Supreme Lord, honoring his position, recognizing our position, humility and repentance, and carrying on with service. That's exactly what Rupa Goswami says, by the way, in Nectar Devotion. If you make a mistake, what do? Is there a process of atonement? Not required. Regret, and then continue with your devotional service, because that's the means of purification. But don't make the mistake again. I just read something today. It was in Melbourne. Prabhupada was going for a morning walk in Melbourne, and there was a very enthusiastic young devotee walking right behind Prabhupada, and he got too close, and his foot hit Prabhupada's foot. Prabhupada turned and looked at him, kept walking. He did it again. Prabhupada turned, kind of glared at him. He didn't say anything. And then he did it again, third time. Prabhupada turned, took his cane and whacked him. Didn't say anything and kept walking. Prabhupada had Sori narrated this. Prabhupada had to correct somebody. He was very soft. First time. But he expected, after the first time, you wouldn't make the mistake again. Now he knew he was dealing with, not very sophisticated, not very refined, highly cultured Western people, particularly. And so he didn't have an expectation that they would be refined and cultured. But he did expect that they would correct when he explained. And when they didn't, and he'd do it again, he would, the mood would change. He would be consistent, very forgiving, explaining, and didn't say, and don't do it again, but that was his expectation. It was done again. He would raise his voice. He would express displeasure. And Harisori said if it happened a third time, he wouldn't say anything and his lower lip would tremble. He really wanted the devotees to correct themselves. And of course, it takes time to correct yourself. But he was a purifying agent. So to that agency of purification, he wanted to bring correction. And it doesn't work to imitate. Sometimes devotees would imitate Prabhupada, and they didn't have the adhikar to do that. But you make a mistake, and it's to be pointed out and not to be repeated. So that's a lesson here. So now this is the final verse of Brahma's Prayers, text 40, 10.14.40. This is, one of the commentaries is Brahma is going on Nam Sankirtan. He's just giving names of Krishna. The first line. Shri Krishna, Vrishnikula, Pushkara Yosha Dayan. Here we go. My dear Shri Krishna, you bestow happiness upon the lotus-like Vrishni dynasty and expand the great oceans consisting of earth, the demigods, the brahmanas, and the cows. You dispel the dense darkness of irreligion and oppose the demons who have appeared on this earth. O Supreme Personality of Godhead, as long as this universe exists and as long as the sun shines, I will offer my obeisances unto you. That's, his lifetime dedication, because Brahma would also exist as long as the universe exists and as long as the sun shines. Here's the BBT purport. According to Srila Sanatan Goswami, Lord Brahma is here engaged in the ecstasy of Nam Sankirtan, glorifying various holy names of Lord Krishna that indicate his variegated pastimes. Lord Krishna expertly suppressed the demoniac population of the earth, which became unbearable with the advent of demoniac politicians like Kamsa, Jarasandha, and Shishupal. Similarly, in modern society, there are many so-called God-fearing people who are actually attracted to demoniac existence. Such persons become enlivened with the setting of the sun and go out in the darkness to enjoy life in restaurants, nightclubs, discotheques, hotels, and so on, which are all simply meant for illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating. Then there are those who openly defy God and his laws, declaring themselves atheists and demons. Both the covert and the overt enemies of the Lord constitute an unholy burden for the earth, and Lord Krishna descends to expertly remove this burden. This is mentioned in commentary. It's just the Prabhupada followers who wrote this just put it in their own language, but it's taken from the Acharyas. Here, Lord Brahma indirectly states that Lord Krishna should remove Brahma's own subtle atheism, which had led him to try to exert illusory power over Lord Krishna. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Lord Brahma, in his shame, felt himself to be like a Brahma Rakshasa from Satyaloka, who had come to the earth to disturb Lord Krishna and his intimate friends and calves. Brahma is lamenting that although Lord Krishna is most exalted, the Lord of all lords, because he had appeared before Brahma in such a simple and innocent feature, decorated with a stick, a conch shell, ornaments, red clay, a peacock feather, and so on, and sporting with his cowherd boyfriends, Brahma dared to challenge him concerning Brahma's prayers, of which this verse is the conclusion. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states, quote, "May these prayers of Brahma, which take away all doubts and broadcast all the definitive conclusions of devotional service, become the expert craftsmanship of the foundation of my consciousness." Beautiful. And we'll hear some other closures, because this is the end of his prayers. A new section begins tomorrow. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, quote, "If you don't want to speak to me because I am an offender, then at least show your mercy by giving the nectar of your glance. By this meal I will be able to maintain my life for the rest of the kalpa." Expressing this feeling, Brahma offered his respects to Krishna. Quote, "You are the sun, or the glance with the right eye, who makes the lotuses of the Vrishni dynasty bloom. At night, lotuses close. And when the sun comes, the lotus is open. So by your appearance, you've opened up the lotus of the Vishnu dynasty. It has now blossomed and become joyful. I am the offspring of a lotus. Clever, huh? Therefore you should show mercy and make me blossom also. You are the moon, or the glance of the left eye, which is the increaser of the ocean. Right? When the tide moves, it moves because of the, at least science says, the pull of the gravitational pull of the moon. As the moon moves, the tide comes and goes back out. You are the moon, or increaser of the ocean, for all the inhabitants of earth, for the Devas, for the birds, the cows of Vrindavan, giving them nourishment. Be merciful to me, the lowest of the Devas, and nourish me as well. Next, you are the destroyer of dense darkness, Sarvahara, Sarvara Hara. In the form of atheism, it's right in the verse, Dharma, atheism. That's your glance with both eyes. And take away the atheism in me, which took the form of trying to spread illusion to you, my master, so that I will not make such mistakes again. So that's a summary of when we make mistakes, how to address them. Though you killed the demons of this earth, Kshiti Rakshasa Druk, you blessed them by having them enter your body. You should purify me also with that punishment, since I am a Brahma Rakshasa, having done away with your calves and cowherd boys. The parentheses. The servant can live happily upon seeing either the mercy or curse of his master, but I cannot live at all seeing but he, the servant, cannot live at all seeing his master disinterested. If you do not give me mercy, then at least curse me. Close parentheses. I should satisfy Krishna, whom previously I thought was acting improperly as God, for happily playing with the cowherd boys with decoration of gunja seeds, clay, peacock feathers, and cane. I pay obeisances to you, decorated with gunja berries, and wearing arka flowers of Vrindavan, which are normally forbidden for worship. I pay obeisances to you, who are worthy of my worship, arham, or are worthy to bestow mercy, or withdraw it from me. Then he concludes, may these prayers of Lord Brahma, which are capable of destroying all the influence of the material world, which are the ocean of all conclusions about devotion, remain impressed upon my heart. Nice. Jiva Goswami. Remember, this is the conclusion of 40 verses and so many pages. In order to offer respect with realization of his powers and with reverence, Brahma first calls out using the names of the Lord's Swarup, Sri Krishna. Then he calls out names depicting his birth and activities, revealing external particulars. Vishnu-kula refers to Vasudev's family and Nanda's family, as was proved earlier. Earlier means earlier chapters, because this is chapter 14. It goes back to chapter 8. According to usage in the text, the term primarily refers to Nanda's family. Next, Brahma referred to Krishna as Pashupanga Jaya, or the son of a cowherd. In verse 1, back in, this is verse 40. Verse 1 was the beginning of his prayers, where he said several things. But, addressing Krishna is the son of the cowherd. So the reference is son of Nanda. Though the word earth is not modified, the intention is to link it with cows and brahmanas, since it is well known that the Lord appears on earth to benefit the cows and the brahmanas. Dharma means dharma which opposes the Lord. The Rakshasas, such as Kamsa, are the promoters of Dharma. Metaphors of the moon, which is the cause of increasing the ocean, and sun, nourisher of the lotus, are given to suggest that the Lord produces all auspiciousness and to suggest his glorification with great fame and power. O Lord, as Krishna, you are Swayam Bhagavan. You are worthy of worship from the sun, which reveals Bhur, Bhuva, and Swa, planets, up to Mahavaikuntha. Or, means another reading of the Sanskrit could be, you alone can show what I saw and no one else. You are able to do everything. You are worthy of worship, spreading over a kalpa, my lifetime. Or, a kalpam can refer to the ornaments of Krishna, such as gunja garlands, peacock feathers, and yogurt rice in his left hand. Arkam can refer to the flowers of the arka tree, which should not be offered to the Lord. I offer respects to you, along with your ornaments, even the flower of the arka tree, which is generally not respectable. And concluding, because of the mercy of the people who received the mercy of Chaitanya, I have explained according to my inclination the prayers of Brahma for their bliss. That's Jiva Goswami's wrap-up of the 40 verses. Sanatana Goswami writes almost the same thing, and then we're done. O Krishna, endowed with various splendors in all matters, Sri Krishna. Endowed with Sri, he attracts everyone's hearts. He is excellence in all ways completely. This is clarified with the other terms addressing Krishna. The reason for this is that he is Bhagavan, who displays all powers. Brahma praises in the form of Sankirtan the Lord's names, after having developed the highest bhakti, summarized in one verse, the purpose of all the avatars, and offers respect at the Lord's lotus feet. So we said this towards the beginning, I'm sure you remember. The whole section is bhakti, bhakti, bhakti. It's bhakti in different features and aspects. When we're next weekend, is it next weekend? Next weekend, I think it's next weekend. The redo of the Govardhan Parikrama is going to happen. There's a schedule that devotees in Singapore found out. Some of them saw it, so they want their congregation requested, can I do for their congregation? So we're going to do again. And one of the scenes is visiting Kusum Sarovar. That's where we're going to start. And directly across from the Parikrama path is Narada Kund. And from Padma Purana, it describes that Narada heard the glories of Krishna in Vrindavan. So he went to Vrindavan, and he wanted to see, not participate in, but see, observe Krishna's Rasa Leela. But he was told, you can't. But Vrinda Devi was very kind to him. Vrinda Devi said, I can take you to Kusum Sarovar, and you can take bath in Kusum Sarovar, and you can then receive the body of a gopi. So he did that. And he came out of Kusum Sarovar as Naradiya gopi. And he didn't dance with Krishna, but he participated, an observer of the rasa dance. And so he had lots of realizations. And then Vrinda took him again to Kusum Sarovar, immersed in Kusum Sarovar. Again, he came out of Kusum Sarovar as Narada. And then he went to this Narada Kund, and there he wrote Narada Bhakti Sutras. This is all in Padma Purana. And I just saw there's a Sri Vaishnava speaker who was speaking, started a whole seminar on Narada Bhakti Sutras. It's not just in our disciplic succession. It's Narada's teaching bhakti, naturally so, because according to the Bhagavatam, he's an empowered, he's a Shakti Vaishavatar, empowered by the Lord's Bhakti Shakti to teach bhakti. And who is his spiritual master? Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma is here in his prayers glorifying bhakti, beginning, middle, and end. He wants to increase his bhakti up to the standard of the immersion of the residents of Vrindavan. He has that realization and appreciation, as does Narada. And the Narada Bhakti Sutras is from beginning to end glorifying bhakti in different ways. Brahma praises in the form of Sankirtan of the Lord's holy names after having developed the highest bhakti, summarizing in one verse the purpose of all the avatars and offers respect to the Lord's lotus feet. By his appearance, the Lord destroyed the grief of Vasudeva and the Yadus and gave them bliss. Like the lotus giving up being closed in darkness and blossoming with the rising of the sun. That's the lotus is the Vrishnis and Vasudeva and the Yadus. They're the lotus that opened by the appearance of the sun. This was described previously. Again, chapter 8. Here's reference to chapter 2. Sa bibrat paurusham dhamma. That is, he manifested the effulgence of the Lord and became as bright as the sun. In that same chapter 2. Dishchahare sya bhavata pado bhuvaha. The heavy burden of the demons upon this earth, which arises from your feet, is immediately removed by your appearance. This is chapter 2 is the prayers of the demigods while Krishna is still in the womb of Devaki. Canto 10, chapter 2. Krishna caused increase in the earth Devatas, the ocean of cows of Braja. By destroying adharma and increasing dharma, he eradicated suffering and produced bliss. Queen Kunti's prayers, similarly, saying this. Even though by increase in the earth, automatically there is increase in the brahmanas and cows on earth, they are individually listed to show the special increase when Krishna appears. Or it can indicate the increase among the sages of Maharloka and the people of Goloka, within Goloka. This refers particularly to the increase in Braja, since his appearance makes the earth, this is Braja's, earth, waterfalls, brahmanas, birds, cows, buffaloes prosper to the highest degree. At the end, Brahma describes the goal, namely, spreading prema bhakti. That's for his purpose of appearance. The Lord takes away the darkness of processes contrary to bhakti. Dharma, Shar Varahara, O destroyer of demons on earth. Here's the commentary. These are of two types. We heard it. Here it is again. Persons with deep demoniac nature opposing bhakti, which is the life of all people, who wander about in the darkness of the material world. That's one category. The second is the enemies of the Vrishnis, like Kamsa. The Lord counteracts some by punishing their pride and others by killing them. This is for their benefit. Oh, most merciful Lord Bhagavan, you encourage the devotees with bhakti. You can do this, and no one else can. O Lord, who can do anything? For my lifespan, kalpam, I offer respect to you. Or, I offer respects to you and all your decorations, like gunja necklaces, earrings, peacock feather, and rice in your left hand. I offer respects even to your arka flower, which is not respectable. I offer respects to you, Krishna, endowed with all powers, son of Nanda, full of the highest bliss. And the last line, in the last part of his prayers. Because of the mercy of people who received the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, I have explained, according to my inclination, the prayers of Brahma for their bliss. That's the conclusion of Brahma's prayers. Tomorrow is Shukadeva Goswami is going on to another topic. Brahma's departure and what happens after that. There's two devotees who I know quite well, live in New York, and they started a program over a year ago where they're both yoga teachers, yoga teachers, both of them for over a decade. So they're quite familiar with the mindset of the yoga circuit. And there were some persons interested in the teachings behind yoga practice, the asanas, etc. practice. So it started with a small group, and then fast forward over 6 months, it went from 5 to 10 to 25, then went up to 80. And their approach was making the message of the Vedic text relevant to their lives. And the makeup, and now a friend was invited in as like a sometimes speaker and a kind of a consultant and so on. And now it's over a period of time, it's up to several thousand people every morning. They've tapped into the meaningfulness. This is new people that they're not necessarily, Hare Krishna sadhakas, but they're people, they're worldly people. Largely their audience is professional people in their 40s or so, plus or minus, with worldly experience and some spiritual inclination, and not having, not wanting to jump on the bandwagon of becoming a Hare Krishna follower, but wanting understandings they can lead their life by, truths that they can relate to and lead their life by. It's a big following. And the class is at 5:30 in the morning. So the people there must be some people in Europe and other places that are tuning in, but their focus is, East Coast. That's where they live. It's where they move around. It's where they teach yoga. So I'm bringing this up because they're aside from the esoteric part of what we just been reading, the amazing Aghasura 12-mile long serpent that comes along the path, and the cowherd boys are off playing, which sounds really nice, and then they meet Aghasura, and then Krishna rescues them and he liberates Aghasura, and then they go have lunch. So that's the kind of basic storyline. But what are and then Brahma does what Brahma does, and Brahma's prayers. Our acharyas are they're feeling really enlivened. And they're practical lessons. So the way to weave. Now this is the persons I'm attempting to address are largely devotees that have said from time to time, everything, when we're doing introduction to Krishna consciousness, everything is kind of real simple, which is it should be, and then we'd like a little deeper presentation of the teachings and the philosophy and so forth. When you go into the deeper parts of the teachings and the philosophy and so forth, it's way over the heads of many people. Not many people, not just a certain group of people, young people or anyway. But there's part of the understanding is there's potencies in all of those messages, whether we understand it or don't understand it. Just like when we first began chanting Hare Krishna, we may not have understood a lot of things, like what's the meaning of the mantra and how does it work and all of those things. But the potency is there nonetheless. So the messages of Brahma similarly, or the messages of the 10th canto, is very elevated. There's an esoteric part, there's a philosophy part, and there's the practical life lessons part. How do we orient ourselves? And there's a rasa, a rasika part. How do we orient ourselves towards how do we live our lives in practical ways? Like many of the sections that we're speaking about, the Brijbasis, some renunciates may look at the Brijbasis and go poo-poo on those people. They're just ordinary people. They've got their occupation, and they got their families, and they got their homes, and they got their paraphernalia, and they're quite ordinary people. They're village people. Poo-poo on the village people. That's not a proper understanding. The exaltedness is not their worldly status. Their exaltedness is something else. And so that's a lesson, a practical lesson for all of us. We're driven by the culture in which we're growing up in and living, with another criterion or the yardstick for what is success. And people are engaged in striving and competing and struggling and to be successful in that arena. It's not just to trash those kinds of efforts, but that's not really what the standard or parameter of success is. And Bhagavatam is helping us to reevaluate. I'm thinking of the time when Prabhupada, after much struggle, he sent Tamal Krishna Maharaj, because everything else was failing, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj was successful in purchasing land in Mayapur. And there's a law in West Bengal that only a certain acreage of land that's agricultural land can be a not-for-profit religious property in West Bengal. They want to preserve the agriculture of West Bengal. So religious people can function, but there's a ceiling of how much land they can have. So he purchased land. And you know the history. Prabhupada went with a grass hut, lived by there was no gate. But, they built a little something, boundary wall, because you do that in India. And then gradually became more substantial, but he lived in a grass hut. Jananivas was nearby with Radha Madhava, the original brass Radha Madhava, and lots of mosquitoes. And then slowly they built the temple. But Prabhupada wanted not just that there was the original building, the Lotus building, was the temple. He wanted the Western devotees to come and have Western standard accommodation, because otherwise they would be uncomfortable. They weren't accustomed to the austerities. I can just share this with you. The first Mayapur festival, there wasn't running water. What there was over here, there was a pump, and over there was a pump for the ladies. You went with your bucket, little plastic bucket, filled up, and you just did a bucket shower. And at the end of 10 days, the place was a sea of mud and lots of mosquitoes. And devotees were getting sick. They're getting sick because they weren't used to it. So he was like adamant. He wanted this, what was called the Long Building. Now it has another name, but just so there could be accommodation. And then slowly it became. But he was very concerned that the comforts that people from the West are accustomed to, they could have that so they can peacefully prosecute Krishna consciousness. I'm making that point because we also may need XYZ to peacefully prosecute Krishna consciousness. But the standard of success in our lives is not, we have XYZ. We have a house, we have a car, we have a computer, we have Wi-Fi, we have stuff. Obviously, we're devotees, so we understand that's not sufficient for happiness. So what's the standard of happiness? And the Bhagavatam is giving us this very elevated picture of the topmost person of the universe. He can not only get a job at an IT company after so many years of study in college and so forth. He can build a universe without going into it. So-and-so can build the rocket ship that goes and does things. But Brahma can build the universe. How powerful is he? And the tendency when somebody is very powerful is what? Be proud. Tendency. So Krishna doesn't like, Krishna will check. Tendency in his devotee. So things may happen to us that have a way of checking pride. That's good. Or knowing the Siddhanta, but not having culture. No, that's not good. Not good. So one of the messages of these, because I just sharing a little bit this interview with one of these two persons that's giving a morning class to 3,000, 4,000 people every day. 3,000, 4,000 people every day. It's like a megachurch. every day, is not just the teaching, because their understanding is these people, their audience, they have worldly experience, and what they're looking for is not worldliness. What they're looking for is not just even philosophy. They're looking for persons that have wisdom, and wisdom means there's culture, and culture means there's practical ways that you see and make decisions and interact with the world around you and other people. And that's what they're looking for, because they've been around for a number of years and done stuff. They're looking for something that's life-changing, quality-changing, character-changing, and it's doable. And our Srimad Bhagavatam teaching, or Lord Chaitanya's teaching, which is Srimad Bhagavatam's teaching, is to carry us to that place, a place of high character, not just high teachings. And how do we get there? Through this method, and following the example of these great souls that are instructing us through their life example, how to come to that standard. One can read and gather information and not have good character. It's possible. One can read with the proper mood and not only have an understanding of this higher realm, but have the good character that entitles us to enter into that higher realm. That's wanted. That's what's wanted. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion or comments back there. Yeah? Over here.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. When pride comes...
Mask, just when you're speaking, if you can remove the mask, I'll hear you better.
When pride comes, like when we are talking with non-devotee or devotee, I know maybe that pride came and we didn't realize that this is the pride. But I realize many times when we are talking with non-devotee, pride comes. So how should work on
curb
that?
pride.
Yes.
How you bring it down.
Yes, Guru.
Well, chapter 13, texts 8 through 12, Bhagavad Gita. The first two items of knowledge are amanitvam, adambitvam, humility and pridelessness. Humility comes before pridelessness. So humility can defeat pride. And pride has a lot to do with what you think is yours, and humility has a lot to do with what you think is you. I and mine, aham and mama. I and mine. And the mine, that which makes us proud, is resting upon the I conception. So the spiritual conception of I is very tiny. It's a particle of Krishna. And if there's something that's mine, it's an endowment given by Krishna to be used in Krishna's service. Like repeatedly we heard Brahma saying, this is your universe. You gave it to me, I'm giving it back to you. If you wish, I can go and do my service in the universe, but it's service to you. That takes away pride. Because it's Krishna's. In fact, I am Krishnas, what to speak of, the ability or something. When there's genuine spiritual humility, the spiritual conception, it checks humility, checks pride. The tendency to be proud has everything to do with a false ego conception of who we are, a misconception of who we are. And it just flows, pride flows. So if you want to check it, you have to go back to the ground zero, the spiritual conception. Who are you? Specifically in relation to Krishna. Tiny. Three times I heard, once in New York, once in Los Angeles, and once in Paris. Prabhupada gave the same example. Someone was asking. In New York it was Brahmananda, in Los Angeles it was Karandar, and in Paris I don't know the person. But I have all this service and I have all this responsibility and I have all this authority. How do I stay humble? And Prabhupada said the same thing each time. Far, far away in the spiritual world, there's unlimited spiritual planets called Vaikuntha planets. Amongst them, the largest is Krishna Loka. And then there's innumerable Vaikuntha expansions from Krishna in Vaikuntha realm. And the Vaikuntha realm is in the vast spiritual sky. In one corner of that spiritual sky, there's a cloud of the material energy called the Mahatattva. It just went down and down and down and down and down and down. And you're asking me how to remain humble. When you go all the way down, it's like, whew. We lose perspective of how insignificant we are. That's where pride comes. But it's the I and the mind, companions. We're not only tiny, we're servants. And whatever it is that we have, it's paraphernalia. It's an opportunity for service. It takes away pride. Tendency, but takes away by the bhakti is so knowledge in action is bhakti.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for a nice conclusion. I was really appreciating how all the different commentaries. And I was just thinking, it may not be related to kind of like the discussion today, but maybe of the people who are coming to Krishna, like the 4 different types of people. When I'm looking at some practical experiences that I'm going through in the Bhakti Vriksha or in the community that we have, there's a mixed even among devotees who or they're taking up Krishna consciousness slowly, and there's some who are coming to Krishna for because they are in distress right now, and they're taking it up seriously because of that distress.
Fine. And
they are having realizations which, I did not expect them to have so suddenly. And, something that they share personally, and they say, Krishna is so real, this was not the same experience for them a few months ago, but they're experiencing that, and it is real for them now. And when the distress goes away, I'm just afraid that Krishna will also be taken away, and you
can count on it. It won't be taken away because the intensity will fade because the motivation has faded and it's bye-bye Krishna. I mean, they're not going to send him a letter saying, chalo, see you later. But that they're going to check out because the intensity, the motivation has shifted. So don't worry it's going to happen. It will happen. That's okay. Their connection is their eternal asset. Then, what are you to do? What are you to do with those people?
Yeah.
Or for those people?
Yeah, I just feel like I should use this opportunity.
Yeah.
And kind of like help them progress in Krishna consciousness. At the same time, I'm also afraid of this like coming phase where they may not take it up so seriously, and I'm trying. I mean, I guess I'm looking for. I will try my best to like guide them in this particular circumstance, but also should I have the expectation that they may not take it up?
Yeah, definitely. That's just par for the course. It's just how the flow of the material energy works. So what to do? Be genuine. Because even when the flow of adversity subsides, people want something genuine. So be genuine. Unconditional genuine. We're fruitive. We want for them, but we want the satisfaction, something, etc., etc. So become genuine, and you'll be satisfied by your connection with Krishna, and you just radiate that, and people will take whatever they want to take. Be a nice. We've been using this expression, nimitta. Be a nice instrument of Krishna, and that's your service. And people can receive or not receive. Their circumstances will change, and their disposition, their enthusiasm, their shelter taking, and their thising and thating will change by circumstance. But let yours not change by those circumstances. Don't become fearful, or don't become apprehensive, or don't become anything less than genuine. And that's attractive. And then Krishna will arrange things. Other persons will come, some will stick, some will fade. The movements of the river are going to keep moving. And you stay the course of striving to be the best instrument of Krishna you can be in your relationship with Krishna and your service, just like these acharyas to Lord Chaitanya, giving bliss to those who gotten the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Be such a person, and the results are up to Krishna. It doesn't mean you don't care; you still care. But yeah, that's the results. That's Krishna's department, and yours is the service department.
So just try my best and not be attached to, or not be disappointed if something like goes the other way.
It will go the other way. You just count on it. It's just how the river flows. It's okay. I mean, I just repeat. I was sitting in a lecture, and Prabhupada was looking around the room. He was describing initiation and saying persons can come forward and render devotional service. And many of you here will not be here later. That's okay, because there's eternal benefit. And initiation, he was describing for persons who are very sincere. And he set a really low bar. He said, they practice chanting for 6 months, they can get initiation. but he knew what he was doing. He was not just sowing seeds, he was being compassionate, giving people a chance, an opportunity, knowing full well not everyone's going to be here tomorrow. and then a week from now less, but no more, and so on. But the whole world should have the opportunity. I was just thinking when you started your question that that our community is such a tiny slice of the population, and how well are we doing in reaching the whole population? So we're little people. What can we do? We can do what we can do, but there's much more we can do, and so you do as Prabhupada. We do as Prabhupada did, which is he found some sincere. Krishna sent him some sincere persons. He trained them, and very quickly engaged them in giving Krishna consciousness to others. That enabled him to spread Krishna consciousness as widely as he did. Of course, he was powerful. He was a turbo, dynamic person. We're little people. But the principle, become pure and be the giver of Lord Chaitanya's message and mercy to your capacity. And expect people are going to come and go. That's okay. I mean, you care. But no surprise. It's just be a conduit for Lord Chaitanya's mercy. That's what you should do. Receive it and give it. Others? Oh, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Just a basic question. If kids at the age of 3 to 6, if they come to a temple where there are, when I say temple, not an ISKCON temple, to a general temple where you have demigods' altars as well as Lord Vishnu's altar. When I ask them to pray to Lord Vishnu for the well-being or whatever, the kids ask me, I just did a prayer in Ganesha's altar. Why should I again pray to Vishnu? That's the question.
Where should you put Ganesha on your altar? That's your question?
No. So in a temple, let's say there's a demigod altar and there is a Vishnu altar. So if kids at the age of 3 to 6, when they come to the temple, I just tell them to chant the name of Vishnu or pray to Vishnu for the well-being.
Yeah.
The immediate question they ask is, I just did my prayer in Ganesha's altar. Why should I again pray here? So
you're let me say back. So I'm responding to what you're asking. Someone goes to a temple where there's multiple altars. They offer their prayers to Ganesha, and you want to encourage them, now go make your offering of prayers to Vishnu, and they say, why do I need to do that? Because I've already offered my prayers to Ganesha. And so you want to know, how do I respond to that person when they ask that question?
Yeah.
Okay. It depends on the individual, but a philosophical answer can be, depending upon your understanding of their familiarity with the Vedas, you could say, the function of Ganesha is what? The function of Ganesha is removal of obstacles. The removal of obstacles to achieve something. And in this world, this is now the big picture of the Vedas, in this world, there are lots of people that have lots of desires for all kinds of things. And a big part of the Vedas is Ganesha's function is removing the obstacles for achieving temporary things. And is by that affinity for achieving temporary things through the Vedas, which come from Narayana, then there's a connection with Narayana, as well as the Devatas who dispense things that you desire. In this way, the Vedas are compared to a kalpavriksha, a desire tree. They fulfill whatever your desires. This desire, that desire, this deva, that deva, and one of the channels that you go through is Ganesha, to remove obstacles in achieving what your desire is. So that's one portion of the Vedas. So worshipping Ganesha is nice, provided you understand what's to be desired. And then the whole picture. Let's step back and look at the bigger picture of the Vedas. What's the purpose of the Vedas ultimately? Well, let's take a look at Bhagavad Gita 15:15. The purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna. Vedaishta sayar vairaham eva vejo vedantakrit veda vedeva chaham. It depends on the person, what you say to them, but let's take a look at Bhagavad Gita 15:15. What's the purpose of the Vedas? So if you approach Ganesha, the ultimate, the higher purpose of Ganesha is to remove the obstacles to reach the goal of the Vedas, which is to know Krishna. That's why you go to Vishnu and offer prayers to Vishnu. Ganesha is there for people who want material, and Ganesha is there for people who want spiritual. And the ultimate of the spiritual is to know Krishna. It's right in Bhagavad Gita. So offer your prayers to Vishnu.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Depends on the person, of course. You may have lost them even before you got past the first sentence. But you give them the big picture, and some people will understand. On the other hand, many people, they just do what they heard from their grandmother or something. There's some family tradition, and so they do the family tradition, and that's enough for them. They don't really understand the purpose behind what they're doing. There's some sense of recognizing some authority, which is good, that's above us. That's good. That's, a good beginning. We are dependent entities, not independent. And then the purpose of that dependent dispenser of removal of obstacles, what's the ultimate attainment to have the obstacle removed for? Depending on the person, how you respond. So, anything else in the room? Otherwise, we're going to go online. We're going online.
Guru Maharaj, just to add to her question, she was asking about 5-6-year-old children. Usually they are the ones asking the question.
Oh. They come with their parents. Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to contradict mom. You're going to have a problem. Mom's going to say, stay away from her. Oh, I didn't get it. Okay. Then you can keep it real simple. Child language. Simple.
Question, Radhika Mataji. After his prayers of after Brahma's prayers, including his prayers, Lord Brahma resumes his service.
You need batteries. Change the batteries. Real fast. It's like changing a tire on a racetrack. He would change it too fast.
So, after concluding the prayers, Lord Brahma resumes his service. What are Vaishnava considerations to assess whether a devotee is allowed to resume his service after an offense or mistake, or to be engaged?
Well, that's up to higher authorities. It's up to higher authorities. It depends on the severity. It depends on the heart orientation of the individual, depends on are they genuinely recognizing a mistake and they're prepared to go on the proper course, and so forth. There's variables, and it's up to some higher authority.
Question from Sanchari. I have heard that for a devotee, Krishna takes control of a devotee's destiny in full, and that karmic reactions don't rule a devotee's life any longer. Does this apply to aspiring devotees as well? Also,
There's too many questions at once, gets the brain confused. Is the second one related to the first one?
Also, what role does karma play in the life of a aspiring devotee?
There's tendency, karma is a specific, it's a reaction for some action or some work, good or bad. Then comes another term, vasana, which means a tendency. After doing things and doing things and doing things, it becomes habit, and it becomes a conditioned tendency, not just a reaction to a specific action. So devotees have tendencies. Non-devotees have tendencies. Devotees have tendencies. Souls in the material atmosphere have tendencies. So tendencies tend to prevail, particularly if one, like the earlier, the first comment, second comment, tendencies will likely resume when intensity of taking shelter slackens. Tendency is likely to resume. But karma is not the same. So for the devotee, if one is engaged in bhakti, karma is removed. Residual tendency may remain. Sanchara, you can take a look at Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, text 11, and that speaks about Krishna's removing residual tendency by the torchlight of knowledge, jnana dipena bhasvata. Krishna does that from within. So for the devotee, provided the devotee continues in their submission unto Krishna, karma is no longer operating. However, if submission slackens, tendency resumes. So beware of slackening, don't worry about karma.
Our second part of the question was about aspiring devotee. Is that the same?
Same.
Question from Uttama Bhakta Prabhu. A Western devotee who has been around for 30 odd years once told me that yoga students are usually looking for happiness in the mode of goodness, which usually checks their entry into Krishna consciousness. Is that right observation?
Oh, there's all kinds of people. Mode of goodness people are pretty rare in this world. I wouldn't say yoga people are mode of goodness people. I think they're New Agey people. And New Agey people doesn't mean mode of goodness.
Another question from Uttama Bhakta Prabhu. In ISKCON, generally speaking, the message has steered a little too much toward external renunciation, which sometimes is too much for new people to handle. Is that a correct observation?
No, I think, the pendulum has swung the other direction. That is to say, in the early days of the Hare Krishna movement, there was a very strong emphasis on renunciation. And, there were far more brahmacharis and even householders that were in kind of artificial renunciation mode. But it's kind of swung the other way. So it's a matter, rather than the history, I think it's good for Uttam Bhakta to focus on for what's a proper application of the principle of renunciation, rather than what it used to be and what it is today. What's for any individual? What's a proper application of? There must be some. Otherwise, one cannot progress. Renunciation doesn't mean just giving things up. Renunciation means letting go of the aspiration to find happiness in the temporary. So it's not just a kicking stuff out or throwing stuff out or rejecting stuff. It's increasing tendency to serve Krishna, diminishing of tendency to be an enjoyer of the temporary. That's the right. And how and where what is appropriate for one person may be not the same for another person, and so forth. It needs to be customized so that one can progressively carry on with the bhakti process in a natural way, in a progressive and steady and natural way.
Next question from Amara Mataji. If someone, either adult or a child, who just started chanting, shares some materially beneficial effects of chanting, then should we emphasize more on relationship with Krishna and not look for material benefits, or just let them continue the way they are naturally developing their relationship with chanting?
This kind of a question puts me in the same space as she hears me answering all the time. It depends. Case by case, it depends. And you need to know the person before you can say this, that, or the other thing. So the principle is know the person and encourage the person. And how this person or that person or a third person are to be encouraged depends upon the person and your relationship with the person. And you may not get it right, so you may have to adjust. But the main is nourish and encourage the person. Whatever seems to work for them, you do that. But it takes knowing the person to get it right.
Next question from Snehavalli Mataji. In one of the commentary, it said that Lord Brahma is asking Krishna to curse him if mercy is not given. This shows Lord Brahma's desperation. Is it just his humility? It seems embarrassing that Krishna didn't respond to his...
No, it's not just humility. There's a Vaishnava teaching that I'm sure, Snehavalli, I'm sure you're aware of. It has to do with the mercy that Lord Chaitanya showed to some by reprimanding them, and the absence of that mercy to some because he didn't reprimand them. Advaitacharya, you can read in Adi Lila, there's a nice description where Advaitacharya, it's in Chaitanya Bhagavat also, he wanted Lord Chaitanya to reprimand him. He didn't. So he did something outrageous so he would reprimand him. And when he reprimanded him, he was like dancing. He started dancing. At last, finally, you've scolded me. He wanted Lord Chaitanya to show his superiority. Because Advaitacharya was elder, but Lord Chaitanya was always showing him respect. He didn't want respect. He wanted to show Lord Chaitanya as superior. And he didn't. So he did something really bad. Twice he did things really bad. And Lord Chaitanya scolded him. So it's mercy. It's neglect is not mercy. If Brahma is taking it, say nothing. Say something. And if it's just scolding, then say something. Then that's mercy. Don't neglect. It's a Vaishnava understanding. You have something, right? Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. This question is more of the praying to Krishna. Like when I was in, when I'm facing the problem, when I was in trouble or something, my prayer to Krishna was so intense actually. Like morning, as soon as I get up, I want to do the chanting, and I always think about Krishna throughout the day. That's how it goes when I'm in the problematic situation. Okay, so I came out of the problematic situation and things are normal, happy and things like that. So during that time, I do not see the same intense actually.
You're just repeating something over here. And so? You're just sharing, same thing.
Yeah, so the question is more of like how to cultivate the mood, like
how to continue the mood.
Yeah.
Well, Krishna can continue to put you in distress. That's one way.
Maharaj, that's my question. I do not want that, Maharaj.
Well, not only that, why put Krishna to the trouble to put you in distress? So just, stay, you can make a choice. You don't have to have Krishna make the choice for you. You can make the choice. A and B. I don't want the distress, and I don't want Krishna to have to go to the trouble of putting me in distress and then pulling me out of distress. I don't want it. You're like a child to a parent, right? I don't need to go off the edge, and so they have to come and rescue me off the edge, and why put them to that trouble? So then you just make a decision to do otherwise. But that's free will. It's a choice. And the immature stage, we're complacent. And the mature stage is we make wise choices. But it's a choice. It comes down to this or that, free will, exercise of free will. And bhakti awakens, the bhakti life awakens. And until bhakti life awakens, then it's that seesaw back and forth. That's the alternative. Bhakti awakens. Something further? No. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Maharaj, I know, we all know prayers like Brahma prayer and Kundi prayer and Gajendra Moksha prayer. They all are very nice. Like maybe I think there is more prayers, but I don't know that. But I want to know, Guru Maharaj, which is more like effective or like which prayer Krishna like most?
The one that's from your heart, that's what he likes more. No, to get to the heart may take some cleansing. So you make your own personal prayer and or you select some favorite prayers. Well, without giving names, I sent to a couple of God brothers that prayers, Govardhanastakam, you're familiar, right? So I sent it to some. Immediately, one of my God brothers sent back, those are prayers by Rupa Goswami. He sent back a set of prayers by Raghunath Das Goswami that he recites every day to Govardhan. Now he's in America. He hasn't been to India in a long time. But his heart is with Govardhan, and he recites daily. So I'm sure it means something to him to do that daily. So find some prayers that you recite that resonate, and it may change over some time. he's a senior citizen Prabhupada disciple, but, every day. So you may change, you may not, you may just find something, just stay with it. And then find some other prayers that inspire you. So, ones that move your heart.
Like Prabhupada.
Well, I before I was living in the temple, I heard again and again and again and again and again and again the Brahma-Samhita Prayers, because Prabhupada went to a recording studio in New York and made the Brahma-Samhita Prayers. So I grew up with the Brahma-Samhita Prayers. It's like that was the baby pablum. I didn't know what they meant, but they went in. So I like them. And I know a number of devotees that they know them by heart because they recite them every day. And it's not just, recitation. It moves the heart. Brahma-Samhita Prayers.
And Guru Maharaj, for like reciting prayer, so what should we take, like one time, like afternoon, evening, morning, or any time we can sing front of Krishna?
What's your question?
Like for
If you go before your altar and you recite some prayers. That's the situation?
yeah, like
When's the ideal time to recite prayers?
morning.
Anytime. Morning is ideal. Brahma Muhurta, but how much can you fit into Brahma Muhurta anyways? Shikshastakam is another set of prayers, certainly. But then it's not just recitation, it's entering into the mood. When Prabhupada made the recording of Brahma-Samhita, he said, he sang, and then he gave, basically it's taking from, it's verbatim reading from Bhaktisiddhanta's introduction to Brahma-Samhita. And he ends by saying that the devotee should enter into the spirit of this hymn as a regular daily function. Now you're asking what time of the day. If you enter into the spirit of the hymn any time of the day, that's you following the instruction. In the morning time, fix it with something else that you do. Whenever that's something you cook every day, or something you do something every day. So you fix it with that. And in our temples, many temples, it's kind of faded, but for a while it was after Mangalarti and Tulsi Puja, recite Shikshastakam. So that's a nice, before you begin chanting japa, chant Shikshastakam. Or when you finish, or something. Find something, fix it with something that you like to do, you're going to do, and you're in a meditative mood. The morning is always ideal. Okay, one more online question. Okay. Last question, by the way.
In thinking of the creation of the universe, were the Vaikuntha planets always existing, or were they created after Goloka?
No. They're eternally existing.
If they always existed, does that mean that the different incarnations and expansions always existed?
Yes.
And events
but incarnation means descending, so they exist before they descend, and then they descend, and then they return.
And events in the material universe,
unless it's empowered, and that's a Shakti Avesh avatars. That's in a different. The Shakti is eternal, and living entities may be empowered, but they're not, like any Prithu. He is a devotee of Vishnu, but he's a Shakti Avesh avatar at the same time. Anyway, carry on.
events in the material universe occur in a particular way to allow for their descent, or does the Lord take on a particular form and a Vaikuntha planet is created after the appearance of that avatar?
No, the forms are eternal. Don't do this temporal thing. They're eternal. And he can appear however he likes. He can appear from a pillar. Or he can appear from a mother. He can appear from the nostril of Brahma. He can appear however he wants to appear. You two have something? You're just having fun with each other. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.